Because remember, at the end of the day, this is basically, it's your skill in handling a difficult or highly sensitive situation. It's artful management, be a diplomat, show finesse, and you will achieve great things.
Welcome to today's episode of the Waking Up to Win podcast series. I'm your host, Mark Pessin, Chief Learning Officer at Realty ONE Group. We are proud to have aligned with industry leaders and our own industry experts to provide you messages which are relevant, timely, and shared in a way to empower you, the real estate professional, to experience today's challenges as a true opportunity. Mike, welcome back. We had such great feedback on your first podcast episode that it's great to have you back again. You closed your first podcast with us with the statement, lead with calm. Many of us have adopted that as our mantra during this time. What message would you like to share with us today?
Well, it's going to relate to leading with calm. One of the things that I like to follow is situational leadership. And situational leadership is basically, it forces a leader to adapt their behavior based on kind of the diagnostics or the behavior of the personality of the person you're leading or communicating with. And right now, communicating that way as both a leader and the participant, you kind of follow each other's personality traits. Right now, the most important element of situational leadership is following good practice of finesse. So I want to talk about finesse a little bit because it's a word that we used to use in sports and athletics, but I think it applies to not just leadership with employees, but it applies to relationships with our customers, real estate professionals with their homeowners and customers, and how we approach certain situations. So that's what I'd like to touch on a little bit today.
That's an interesting word. I hadn't really thought of finesse, but if you can expand on that, that'd be great.
Well, let's think about it. What does finesse mean? It kind of means intricate and refined delicacy. So kind of you think of being subtle, having a little panache, having a certain level of expertise and being sensitive to what's around you. So it's kind of the skill in handling a difficult or highly sensitive situation, artful management, or maybe even diplomat-like. So when you think about what does that mean in business, right now we find ourselves in the middle of a unique period of modern history, right?
Absolutely.
So since we're in this period, it's how we approach everything. We have to be really aware of what's around us, and what's around us are people. And every person has a different take on what's going on in this unique part of history during our pandemic and during the COVID crisis. So the word finesse needs to be thought of, and whether it's dealing with an employee, dealing with a family member, a real estate professional dealing with a homeowner who has a listing but is highly sensitive towards this virus and what's going on. So we have to, we have to manage force versus finesse. So, and what I mean by that is there's certain times in life where you can impose your will on others and you force a situation, or a leader or a person in their business has to make tough decisions. We're being faced with some of that right now. But it's the force versus finesse. We actually need to work on practicing more of the finesse. So I look at it as our business life requires us to force things to happen and impose our will on part of the business. But then the vast majority needs to practice kind of a calmer, more delicate approach to each situation, because we don't know what that person's going through. They might have somebody that is infected. They might have lost somebody close to them. That homeowner might have an immunity issue that they're very worried about, but that's very private to them. So we can't just go and force typical marketing or sales tactics or management leadership tactics. We have to step back and try to read the situation, which is a trait in situational leadership, and make sure we're kind of looking at the overall diagnostics around us and the behavior or the personality of that person we're communicating with, and then say, okay, how can I now alter my approach to match what's going on in their life? And that's hard. It makes us do a little more research and listening before versus just forcing or having a fiery approach to it.
So it sounds like you're saying we've got to be more conscious than before of the other person's circumstances to be more aware of how to approach it.
Absolutely. More conscious. And we have to put in a little extra work to try to learn what that is. And when we're busy and worried in our own lives right now, sometimes that's hard. I've seen people just in communication with folks within the organization, you see sometimes people not thoughtful enough in their listening practices to say, what is this other person going through and how do I want to approach this meeting or this Zoom call or this conversation or this email? Because there's so much going on and we're all very busy. People tend to get short with each other. So we have to make sure we're looking at that. And where I'm most worried is we've got the best real estate professionals in the country out there. And it's going to be challenging for them because they still have some customers that are like, hey, this is, an essential service in our state or our county. I'm still going to close business. So I'm going to keep doing business the way I'm going to do it. Where some of their homeowners are going to be, hey, list my house, show my house, let's go. And others are going to be very, well, yeah, my house, let's keep it listed, but I don't really want anybody looking at it unless they're really serious. So how do you balance that? And how do you use different technology and tools? But that agent, that real estate professional has to read that language and has to do a little more research into kind of how this looks.
So do you think that means asking a lot more questions, just kind of being more aware of what the other person's needs are at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more probing questions on what would you like to accomplish? How do you feel about this? Usually if you just ask an open-ended question about how are you doing? Are you feeling good about this? What do you think what's going on in the world? Oftentimes people will just explode and tell you everything that they think, and you'll be able to sit back and listen and go, okay, now I need to approach the sales process or my conversation this way based on what I just heard. And people will often share what news network they're listening to, what news sources they're listening to, what websites they're observing to get their numbers. And it just comes out naturally. And it's how I lead off a lot of conversations with employees because I want to know what is their frame of reference. And I just ask an open-ended question, and they will often, as I say, sometimes, they just throw up all their feelings and views with you just asking one or two open-ended questions, and then you can alter your approach. But that also means doing your homework on what does altering the approach mean. So you have to somewhat rehearse in your brain beforehand. If a person feels this way, my approach is going to be X, Y, and Z. But if they're the total opposite and they kind of give me an answer that's the opposite of that, then my approach is A, B, and C. It's a different approach. So, and that varies depending on who you're talking to, if it's a homeowner, if it's a real estate professional, if it's a broker, if it's an employee. So you have to alter that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously everyone, I think, is at a heightened level of stress right now. Regardless of what's going on, I think everyone's stress levels are up. So it's got to be a challenge to, when you're focused on your own problems or your own stresses, to then put yourself in someone else's shoes and really try to take the time to learn what their perspective is.
Well, let's put it this way. I have an example. Somebody the other day said, hey, this is how I work. People are just going to need to deal with it. And I said, okay, just listen to what you said there. Might that be small-minded thinking? Might that be growth limiting? And they go, well, what do you mean? I know you're really busy, but that type of approach, saying this is how I work, people need to deal with it, is not the approach that is an open-minded person. And that's going to limit your growth because you're going to turn off potentially half of your customer base who thinks the other way. So when they said, well, I didn't look at it this way. I'm just really stressed. I'm sorry. And it was somebody that works for me that I had to kind of go through that conversation with to make sure they understood. I get why you just had that approach, but let's be more open-minded in our thinking. Let's not limit our growth by saying we're going to tick off half of the people that have a view the other side of me.
It does make a lot of sense. So what would you say? I mean, obviously asking probing questions, being a good listener, what other ways would you say that people right now, agents especially, can make sure that they're really attuned to what their clients' needs are?
So the question I would ask always is, start off with just how are you doing? How are you getting through this? How are you finding your work? Are you going into an office? Are you staying home? Oh, no. And somebody will say, no, I'm staying home. Well, is your family healthy? Are you good? Yeah, everybody's good, but we're not going to the grocery store. We prepared, we hunkered down. I'm nervous. I don't want anybody to go anywhere. If we do have to go somewhere, we're wearing a mask and a glove. You're asking them questions that are letting you know how they feel about the situation. So then you can come back and say, well, what's the best way for us to show our home? How do you feel about a virtual technology where I don't come over, but we use Zoom, or I do a video call or a Facebook with you or Skype or whatever. So it's just getting them by asking about them first and getting them talking. You're going to learn from them.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously you're figuring out what their challenges are, what their stressors are, so that you then know how to support them best. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about know your audience, know your customer, know your employee, and then who's more troubled, who's more worried, do business differently based on that type of reaction. So everybody we have come in, every consultant, every great speaker out there. We had Magic Johnson at our summit. What was the main thing? He said, know your customer. So it's the same thing here. Know your audience, know your customer, know your employee. Look out where their views are, who's more troubled, who's more worried. Use Finesse to do business differently with that customer.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's a similar method to what we've been teaching our sales professionals for some time, where we talk about the Ford script, where it's all about asking questions. So the Ford script is family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And it's just about getting the customer to kind of open up and talk about what their wants and needs are. But obviously in this heightened state of, stress and crisis that people are going through, I think that becomes that much more important. So this is really valuable stuff. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no, I think your approach to, send people to one.u and show them those courses to say this is a great way to brush up on this and to ensure that they're doing the right thing, to go to, the vast number of resources that you guys have put together is the best way. Because remember, at the end of the day, this is basically, it's your skill in handling a difficult or highly sensitive situation. It's artful management, be a diplomat, show finesse, and you will achieve great things.
Awesome. Mike, this is powerful stuff. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it today. And I have to tell you, you are my favorite speaker. It used to be Tony Robbins, but now it's you. So thank you so much.
Hey, right back at you, Mark. Love you.
If you'd like to learn more about what Mike has shared with us today and become a more effective communicator, please visit one.u and check out these resources. 5 keys to powerful business relationships. How to become more productive, effective, and influential. Effective listening skills. And formal and informal communication. And remember, my friends, by working together, we will achieve greater success faster.